What's up, people? It's your girl Adiola. How many Africans still remember the story of Patrise Lumumba? In fact, I will not be surprised that some Africans have never heard about Patrise Lumumba. In this era where African schools don't really teach African history, I mean, we learn more about the Queen of England when I was growing up in school than what happened in our own history. And in case you're wondering why you should care about what happened to this man, well, this man, Patrise Lumumba, by the age of 35, had impacted a legacy that so many of our present-day leaders in Africa can only dream of. And he has inspired so many people, and even though he's dead, he's still inspiring people. Recently, the country of Belgium returned the only remnant of Lumumba, his gold tooth. And they tendered some apology, which to me is not enough. I'll tell you why. But for you to understand the gravity of what Belgium did in the Congo, we have to go back in time. Before Belgium explorers arrived in the Congo, about 4 million Congolese people had been shipped out as slaves across the Atlantic Ocean to Brazil, to the US, and of course to the Caribbean. But in 1885, King Leopold II took over the country of Congo as his own personal property. That is something that I still cannot wrap my mind around. How anybody can decide that this new country, because of its natural resources and its beauty, is henceforth my personal property. How? We really need to talk about the Berlin Conference someday, when Africa was literally divided among colonialists as if Africa belonged to them. But even before then, even before the Berlin Conference, the US had recognized Belgium as the owner of the Congo. The country of Congo, by the way, is 77 times bigger than the country of Belgium. But because he had soldiers and they had guns, King Leopold, for 23 years, he unleashed the most brutal enslavement in Africa. King Leopold II forced the people of Congo to extract their own natural resources for him to build Belgium. They were not seen as human beings, by the way, the people of Congo. In fact, animals were treated better than them. At least 10 million Congolese people were massacred in the 23 years that King Leopold II was in charge of Congo. Many of them were flogged to death. And we're talking about in the 1800s, 10 million people. The population of Belgium today is 11 million, just to put it in perspective. Now, this is different from the millions of Congolese people whom he cut off their hands and their genitals, whom he starved, whom he held their children as ransom. In fact, he cut off the hands of so many children as well, and he burned down so many villages at a time, because anytime they failed to meet the quota of extracting rubber, among other things. If you see how advanced some Western countries are today, make sure that you also know their history, because many countries were built by Africa's natural resources. Now, the situation in Congo was so bad that there was a public outcry all over the world. There were reports of widespread murder, torture, and other abuses in the rubber plantations, and this led to international outcries against King Leopold II. And so the Belgian government took control of Congo from King Leopold, and they decided to make it a colony of Belgium instead of a country of slaves that are being treated anyhow. So in 1908, Congo became a colony of Belgium, which is also a sad joke, because you can't even compare the two countries population-wise, not to talk about how big, how vast Congo is compared to Belgium. Like I said, Congo is 77 times bigger than the country of Belgium. And as of that time, if the history statistics was anything to go by, the population of Belgium was about 2 million, and the population of Congo as of that time was more than 9 million, according to Statistica.com. And that is despite the fact that for 23 years before that, about 10 million Congolese people had been killed. But then, of course, Belgium had guns, and, you know, they had the army. And though they were now a colony of Belgium, Belgium still treated them as less equal.
Under Belgian rule, natives had virtually no political voice and had no rights to own land or travel around the country as they pleased. Although they could attend primary schools, the only other form of further education available to most natives was either in Catholic seminaries or the colonial army. Only in the year 1950, nearly half a century into the colonial era, were native Congolese permitted to attend the same secondary schools as the children of Belgian settlers.
Just imagine, this is your country. People came to your country and suddenly you are not human anymore. They were not even allowed to be educated beyond secondary school until about the 50s.
While natives were encouraged to train as clerks, traders, miners, and mechanics, they could not become doctors, lawyers, or architects. In sharp contrast to British colonial policy, which generally relied on a level of joint enterprise between natives and the colonial administration, the Belgian approach was aimed at ensuring complete dependence on Belgian manpower and expertise.
It was in the 50s, by the way, that we started knowing about Patrise Lumumba, who was part of the movement for independence in Congo. He was a poet, and many of his writings at that time had anti-imperialist themes, and so it caught the attention of the colonialists. He was also a journalist and a clerk at the post office. So as he became more and more popular with agitations for independence, the authorities wanted to keep him in his place. They wanted to teach him a lesson. So after a study tour in Belgium in 1956, he was accused of embezzling $2,500 from the post office where he worked. And so for that, he was jailed for 12 months. But instead of that keeping him down, that actually made him more determined and more committed to the cause of seeking for independence. He just totally kicked against anybody coming into his country and treating him like an animal. He was only 31 years old at that time, by the way. And then in 1958, when he was 33 years old, was when he founded his own party, the Movement National Congolese, MNC, focusing on independence, state-led economic development, and of course neutrality in foreign affairs. So all this, the fact that he's not dependent on Belgium, put him ahead of his contemporaries. There were other people agitating for independence as well, but they still wanted to be dependent on Belgium. But his philosophy was that Africans don't need to depend and that they have everything they need to be self-sufficient. You guys remember we've talked about how blessed the Democratic Republic of Congo is. The natural resources, the vast rivers, and everything that they have should make them even better than Dubai of today. So that same year, he attended the All-African People's Conference in Accra, Ghana, which was hosted by Ghanaian Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame really loved Patrise, by the way. He really admired him. And this is where his speech in Ghana inspired a lot of Africans of like-minded. And then a year later, Lumumba was arrested for inciting an anti-colonial riot in Stanleyville, Congo. 30 people were killed that time, and then he was sentenced to 6 months in prison. But you know, despite Lumumba being in prison, his party, the MNC, won a majority in the December local elections in the Congo. And as a result of strong pressure from delegates who are upset by Lumumba's trial, he was released and allowed to attend the Brussels conference, where it was decided that Congo would finally and formally become an independent country by June of that year, June 30th of 1960. And then on June 30th, 1960, Patrise became the first Prime Minister of Congo, and he gave a speech that the world did not forget.
Les insultes, les coups que nous devions subir matin, midi et soir, parce que nous étions des nègres. Qui oubliera qu'à un noir, on disait tu, non certes comme à un ami, mais parce que les voix honorables étaient réservées aux seuls blancs.
This man, at the age of 35, spoke without apology about how his people had been treated by Belgium.
Nous avons connu que nos terres furent spoliées au nom des textes prétendument légaux qui ne faisaient que reconnaître les droits du plus fort. Nous avons connu que la loi n'était jamais la même, selon qu'il s'agissait d'un blanc ou d'un noir, accommodante pour les uns, cruelle et inhumaine pour les autres.
We'll definitely put the link to the full speech in the description below so you guys can watch it, but it was packed. That speech did not sit well with Belgium. Keep in mind, by the way, that his speech that day was in response to the speech given by King Baldwin. While he was granting them independence, he went on into praising King Leopold II, saying that he didn't come as a conqueror, but he came to civilize them.
L'indépendance du Congo constitue l'aboutissement de l'œuvre conçue par le génie du roi Léopold II, entreprise par lui avec un courage tenace et continuée avec persévérance par la Belgique.
Il demande surtout de ne rien changer, si on n'est pas sûr de faire mieux.
Nobody criticized King Belgium for what he had said. He said all these things, and the president, you know, they had the prime minister and they had the president. The president, when it was his turn, he just got up and thanked the king for his speech. But when it was time for Patrice to speak, he decided to say what was actually in the minds of so many of the Congolese people. He was not afraid of what could happen to him.
Les images ont été perdues. La voix est restée.
Nous avons connu les ironies, les insultes, les coups que nous devions subir matin, midi et soir, parce que nous étions des nègres.
But as expected, that speech did not sit well with Belgium. It didn't even sit well with the West because according to history books, most European journalists that reported that speech, because you know it was televised, they were shocked by Lumumba's speech. And Western media criticized him instead of praising him for what he said. In fact, Time magazine at that time characterized his speech as a venomous attack. Many people feared that his speech was a call to arms, was going to incite Africans to start attacking them. One thing that Belgium and the US realized that day was that they would not be able to control Patrise Lumumba and that he would not willingly give his country's natural resources to them. Now, when you have time, guys, try to read this article titled The DRC and America's Nuclear Weapons, because throughout the 1940s and the 1950s, the Congo was actually #1 supplier of uranium to the US. In fact, 80% of the uranium that America used to build the nuclear bombs that were launched against Japan during the World War II in 1945, which made the US win, originated from the mines of Congo. So you can see how not just Belgium but the US also needed access to the resources of the Democratic Republic of Congo. So Patrice became a stumbling block for them, which is why till today there are several debates about whether or not the US, the CIA, is involved in the killing of Patrise Lumumba or not.
2 months later, with the CIA, with White House approval, decreeing that he should be assassinated. Giving independence to an African colony was okay for them as long as it didn't disturb existing business arrangements, as long as the European country could continue to own the mines, the factories, the plantations.
Also, political science professor Stephen Weissman, who served on the staff of the House of Representatives Subcommittee on Africa from 1979 to 1991, had this to say.
Now, most Americans, and even many diplomatic historians, are not aware of what I'm going to discuss here, of the fact that there was a CIA role in the assassination of Patrise Lumumba.
And then, of course, he said that this was denied.
The Church Committee, a committee of the United States Senate, investigated this and determined Lumumba was killed by Congolese rivals. It does not appear from the evidence that the United States was in any way involved with the killing. But this is a mistake. The CIA station chief, Larry Devlin, participated along with the Belgian officials and Congolese on the CIA payroll, in the decision to transfer Lumumba to this secessionist state of Katanga.
Also keep in mind that Democracy Now! In 2011 interviewed a former CIA agent who had this to say about what happened.
CIA had developed a program to assassinate Lumumba. The operation didn't work. They didn't follow through on it. It was to give poison to Lumumba. And they couldn't find a setting in which to get the poison to him successfully in a way that it wouldn't appear to be a CIA operation. I mean, you couldn't invite him to a cocktail party and give him a drink and have him die a short time later, obviously.
And so it was not a surprise after he gave that speech that within 7 days of him becoming a prime minister, rebels sprung up in different parts of the country wanting to take power from Patrice. And then Belgium said that they were going to help him to stop the rebels. But guess what Belgium did? They brought in soldiers to work with the rebels so that they could overthrow Patrice. So Patrice asked for help from the United Nations, and they said no. And so guess what he did? He turned to the Soviet Union, enemies of Belgium, enemies of the US. You know, the understanding was if the Soviet Union should help Patrice, they may now have access to the uranium to build nuclear weapons, which the other parties don't want. And so the US and Belgium allegedly sponsored to get rid of Patrise Lumumba.
They handled it by the chief of station talking to Mobutu about the threat that Lumumba posed, and Mobutu going out and killing Lumumba, having his men kill Lumumba.
And did I mention that Patrise had a personal assistant by the name Mobutu Sese Seko? Mobutu Sese Seko used to be close to Patrise Lumumba. He used to be in the army, and he used to be an informant for the Belgians. And also he used to be a journalist. It breaks my heart because, to be honest with you, the summary of Patrise Lumumba's story is that we Africans are our own problem. There was nothing outsiders could do if there was no one inside willing to compromise. It's so unfortunate that someone that was close to him became the person that was used against him. And guess what? It's still happening today. We have never been united. If we were united, we wouldn't be where we are. If the people of Congo were united, first of all, there wouldn't be any uprising by any rebels in the first place. And if only Mobutu Sese Seko was not a sellout, Patrise Lumumba may still be alive today. We don't know. But by now, Patrise had trusted Mobutu so much so that when he became the prime minister, he gave Mobutu Sese Seko the office of the Secretary of State to the presidency. And then when the rebels started agitating in different parts of the country and the Belgium sided with the rebels, Patrise fired the Belgian military officers. And he made his confidant, Mobutu Sese Seko, the chief of staff of the army.
By aligning himself to American and Belgian interests, Mobutu realized that he could use their military might to consolidate power for himself and create a perfectly symbiotic relationship between him and two of the world's most powerful countries.
Someday we'll talk about Mobutu. Patrise had no idea that by making him the head of the army, he just gave him the resources he needed to overthrow him.
Acting in collaboration with President Kasavubu, the Belgians and the Americans, Mobutu would go on to arrange for the capture and secret execution of the very same man that had brought him to the corridors of power.
And I think I should let you guys know that he was 31 years old at that time when he decided to betray Patrise, when he decided to betray his own country for greed, for Belgium. And so he had him arrested.
Following his capture by crack commandos of strongman Colonel Mobutu, taken to Mobutu's headquarters past a jeering, threatening crowd, Lumumba was impassive at this lowest ebb of his stormy career. Mobutu watched as his troops manhandled Lumumba, but promised the pro-red Lumumba a fair trial.
And of course, after torturing Patrise and his men that were arrested with him, he had the firing squad shoot them, and their bodies were thrown into a shallow grave. But of course, the following morning, they decided to make the bodies disappear, and they wanted to prevent a burial site from being created so that people would not be going there. And so Belgian officer Gerard Soete and his team dug up and dismembered their bodies and dissolved their bodies in sulfuric acid while their bones were grounded and scattered. The only thing that remained of Patrise Lumumba was his gold tooth. And that officer took it to Belgium, where it has been for the last 61 years.
On the 21st of January, they dismembered the corpses and dissolved them in sulfuric acid, secretly saving 2 teeth from Lumumba's body as a trophy.
And that's what was now returned. So Patrise could finally get a befitting burial in his own country. And that's why I said, personally, I don't think that it's enough to say we're sorry. I mean, with all that they did, Congo has not recovered from what the Belgians did. And Mobutu went on to be one of the worst dictators in Africa for 3 decades. And even now, Congo has not gotten on its feet. You know, I think that there should be some kind of repatriation for the damage done in Congo, for taking democracy from them. Although I will not suggest giving money or anything to African leaders as repatriation, because it would not get to the people. They would, steal it, embezzle it. Let me know what you guys think to compensate the people of Congo for killing their hope. So the funny thing is, Belgium has expressed regrets, but the US has not said anything or even acknowledged its role, whether or not it was involved in the killing of Patrise Lumumba. Let me know what you guys think about that. But more importantly, if you notice, I kept stressing his age and Mobutu's age. when they both made history. And it's because I want to encourage us, young people of Africa today, that we've become complacent. We need to wake up. We don't even know the power that we have. A lot of people that made impact in their time, they were young. We are leaving all the decision making about our continent in the hands of older men, many of whom do not care about our countries. Many of our presidents today in Africa still enjoy being puppets in the hands of France, for example. We have 20-something-year-olds, 30-something-year-olds that are medical doctors, engineers, inventors, doing amazing things. You know, that's your prime age, 40s, 50s. When would we step into steering the affairs of our countries as well in our prime age? If Patrise could touch the world at 35, if Thomas Sankara was only 37 when he was killed, I made a video about his life, his exploits, and the things that he did in the short time that he was head of state. We'll put that link in the description below. But if they could do all that, what are we doing with our time? Because someday we'll also become history, and people will talk about what we did or what we did not do. May the soul of Patrise rest in peace. He was indeed a father of democracy in Africa. You guys not know much. Guess what? I'm just keeping it real. If you've enjoyed this video, by the way, please click the thumbs up button and please share it. Just copy the link, share it on your social media platforms. And if you're yet to subscribe to this channel, what is it that you want us to do for you? You want us to beg you? All right, here is your beg right there. We just begged you. Please click the subscribe button. It is free and it's just for you to know whenever we upload a new video. All right, y'all, it's been real and I'm keeping it right up in here. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you're yet to subscribe to my channel, I'm watching you on Plasma TV. Press the subscribe button and the bell button. Until next time, I'm going to see you all later. Peace out.